The ancient Egyptian belief in resurrection and immortality after a short and temporary life and death is the utmost proof of the passion of the Egyptian human of observation. For he had observed that the sun rises in the east and sets and rises again from the same position, and the moon shines and decreases and gets complete again. His occupation with his daily busy activities never turned his attention from studying the astronomical phenomena above him, like the movement of the sun in the sky during daytime and its disappearance at night, giving way to the moon, in addition to the sparkle of some stars. These observations were the nuclear base of the principles of a real science of astronomy. They made maps and lists where stars and planets were located. The practical purpose of that was to determine time and measure the age. The Egyptian ancient sources are incredibly full of many evidences proving the great knowledge of the Egyptians of astronomy and their ability to use this science in many aspects of their lives. The sun, being a celestial body, played a great role in their beliefs and in their practical life. The scientists of Ion City or Heliopolis invented the solar calendar and started using it in 2773 BC. They calculated the days of the year to be 365 days and divided them into 12 months. Each month was composed of 30 days. Then the last 5 days were festival days, celebrating the birth of Osiris' family, who were 5 in number, a day for each member. Beyond doubt, the invention of the Egyptian to the sun calendar wasn't by any means an easy task. It required hectic observation, supported by a vast mental maturity. The Egyptians knew how to measure time, for there are hours of day and hours of night. Amongst the means of measuring night hours is a water clock. Its oldest example goes back to the time of King Amun-Hotep III, and it was found in Karnak Temple. It's composed of a pot made of stone, with a hole near the base. On its outer surface, celestial figures were inscribed, while the inner surface was divided into horizontal lines determining the level that the water reaches in an hour, and vertical lines to divide the year into 12 months. Starting from the New Kingdom, the astronomical scenes occupied large spaces of the ceilings of many royal and individual tombs. They are scenes that represent stars collections and celestial bodies and planets and lunar months and the hours of day and night. The ancient Egyptian engineer had used his astronomical knowledge and subjugated it to serve his creeds and its constructional needs. The most impressive and formidable example of that are the great temples of the New Kingdom. Amongst them, only one stands as a prominent and dominant construction. This shows the perfection of engineering and the geniusity of the ancient Egyptian architect. It's the great temple of Abu Simbel. King Ramses II, the builder of Abu Simbel temples, is the most famous pharaoh of the 19th dynasty kings. He ruled Egypt after the death of his father Seti I for 67 years. That was between year 1305 and 1237 BC. In a text on the walls of Seti I's temple in Abydos, he mentioned that his son was co-regent with him during the latest period of his 14 years of ruling Egypt. King Ramses II has immortalized himself by building temples and chapels and stelae all over Egypt, the most important of which is the great temple of Abu Simbel, which he dedicated to the cult of Ammon and Rahur Akhti and Betah and himself. Next to it is a small temple of Abu Simbel known as Queen Nefertari's temple, dedicated to herself and to goddess Hathor. The great temple of Abu Simbel is a unique prototype of its kind in the art of the human architecture. In fact, Ramses II has distinguished the area of Abu Simbel over other areas where he had built his other temples, for it was considered one of the holiest places 5 centuries before he thought of achieving this great project. The goddess of the western hills, or Apshik, goddess Hathor, was the source of the sanctity of this place. Ramses II's great temple came to add more overwhelming feeling of greatness and holiness to this area, for its location was carefully chosen to stand by the Nile on the west bank, rising 124 meters above sea level. The 2 temples were completely hewn out of the solid rock. Its massive height, that reaches 33 meters, dazzles the viewer with the artistic consistency between itself and the rest of its constructional elements, as well as the incredible harmony between the monument and the mountainous environment which surrounds it. Abu Simbel Temple is composed of a facade occupied by 4 colossal statues of Ramses II, each 20 meters high, and represents him throughout the 4 phases of his life. Then, a great colonnade with giant pillars and statues of the pharaoh is situated directly behind the facade. The hall has side chambers and opens to another hall with reliefs all around the walls. At the depth of 63 meters lies the most important part of the temple, and the cause of its famosity worldwide, both in the ancient times and the modern ones. It's a miraculous sanctuary. In the sanctuary, there are 4 statues. The first one on the left represents God Betah, the god of literature and art. The second statue is of god Ammon. The third statue is King Ramses II in his divine nature, and the fourth one to the right is god Rahur Akhti. The axis of the temple was aligned from west to east in such a way that twice a year the rays of the rising sun reach the divine figures on the rear wall of the sanctuary. On the 22nd of October and the 22nd of February at dawn, the viewers hold their breath, waiting for that glorious moment when the sun bashfully rises in the sky bit by bit, steadily, focusing its rays onto the depths of the temple and on its rarest part and its most sacred one, the sanctuary. The sun then travels slowly and shines over the four faces seated there, one after another from right to left, starting with the sun god Rahur Akhti and ending by Betah, the god of art and darkness, resting on the way on god Amun-Ra and King Ramses II faces. That miraculous view is one of the most important living proofs to the geniusity of the ancient Egyptians in astronomy and mathematics, and subjugated them to serve their engineering purposes. When the construction of the high dam started in 1960, the water level behind it was expected to rise over 133 meters above sea level. The great temple of Abu Simbel was just 124 meters higher, and the small one 120 meters only. Submerging under the Nile water was inevitable. In 1964, the UNESCO began a rescue mission that seemed impossible. Its plan was dismantling the stones of the temples in the most accurate way and reconstructing them in a new higher location. The challenge was the preservation not only of the natural rock-cut image of both temples, but also of the miraculous engineering phenomena of the sun alignment over the statues inside the sanctuary of the Great Temple that happens only twice a year, in the 20th of February and 20th of October. The new location of the temples was chosen 65 meters higher and directed 180 degrees northwest of the original location. That difference shifted the days to 2 days later. This massive work ended in just 4 years in 1968 and costed 16 million Egyptian pounds, of which Egypt paid the third, the United States the third, and 50 European countries the last third. Just like all pharaohs, King Ramses II wanted to commemorate his name with the gods, and indeed, by his great constructional achievements, presented best in Abu Simbel temples, he'll be remembered with glory forever. Queen Hatshepsut's mortuary temple at Deir el-Bahari, called by the ancient Egyptians Djeser Djeseru, or Sacred of the Sacreds, is recognized as one of the architectural wonders of the world. Designed by Senenmut, the temple was constructed around 1450 BC. It is set against the backdrop of the Theban cliffs and rises in a series of 3 layers. In the center of the upper level, there is a doorway entrance that leads into an open court. Opposite the doorway and cut into the bedrock is a sanctuary chapel dedicated to the god Amun. The width of the open court is just under 23.5 meters, with the chapel extending a further 19 meters into the rock. When standing at the rear of the innermost chapel, facing the entrance, there is a clear aperture lens view to the horizon. Hatshepsut's temple is ideally placed to view astronomical events towards the eastern horizon, which includes moon and sunrise, as well as the Orion constellation and the star Sirius. The alignment of the temple is set on an azimuth of 116.5 degrees, which when first discovered suggested a midwinter sunrise alignment. While such events can be postulated in theory, they can only really be proved by being tested out on site at the relevant day of the year. On the day of the solstice, a band of low cloud could be seen close to the horizon, which made it very difficult to make out the horizon even with binoculars. Calculations had suggested that the sunrise would occur at 6:32. In fact, the first rays of the morning sun were not visible until 6:33, when the sunrise was perceived very close to the meridian line of the chapel. However, it's still not possible to determine whether this view showed the sun breaking the horizon or cloud line. The orb of the sun occupies about half of the ecliptic at the horizon, its light in effect occupying a quarter of the visible doorway entrance. The first rays of light from the sun dramatically projected a reddish-pink rectangle onto the rear wall of the chapel. As the sun rose, the projected rectangular light image from the entrance doorway slowly moved to the right before finally moving off the rear wall about 11 minutes after its first appearance. We can now be sure that this same event has occurred annually for the past 3,500 years and will continue to do so in the future. The photographic evidence obtained from the visit to Hatshepsut Temple on the 22nd of December 2007 and again on the 21st of December 2008 affirms this midwinter solstitial alignment of this temple. It adds considerable weight to the view that celestial phenomena played a significant part in determining the alignment of some of the temples of Egypt. About 1.5 kilometers south of Hatshepsut Temple lies the scattered remains of the temple of King Amun-Hotep III, who reigned from 1382 till 1350 BC. Little now is left of this once great temple, saving two famous statues of the king, known as the Colossi of Memnon, that look out towards the morning midwinter sun at its eastern end. Its orientation, however, can be easily established both through the statues and from a road that abuts the temple and runs straight for 3.5 kilometers to the bank of the Nile. The calculated azimuth of the temple is 116 degrees to 25 degrees against a study of 117 degrees. Making this another midwinter sunrise alignment in Luxor area. The main directional orientation of the vast temple of Amun, known as Karnak, which stands on the east bank of the Nile in Luxor, faces west toward the Theban hill on the opposite side of the river. Its calculated azimuth of 296 degrees to 53 degrees corresponds with a midsummer sunset on a level horizon. Magnificent solstitial sunrises can be experienced today from the position of the alabaster altar in the outer courtyard close to the entrance of the present temple, behind the present bark shrine of Amun. However, unlike almost every other temple in Egypt, the present sanctuary of Amun has two doorways, a main door that faces out to central aisle of the temple, and a secondary rear doorway opposite the first, facing east towards the morning sun. One might speculate that at special moments, such as the midwinter sunrise, both doors could have been opened to allow dazzling sunlight to flood the aisle from behind the golden statue of Amun. Such an effect would have been awesome. The ancient Egyptians were the pioneers of science in general, and in astronomy and engineering in particular. However, their knowledge was transferred to the world through the Greeks, then the Romans. Today, every field of science can be traced back to the time of ancient Egypt. Their holy sun did not only illuminate their sanctuaries with precision, but had lit the early sparkles of civilization and illuminated the minds and lives of all humanity.